Hi, my name's Steve. Welcome to another Mindbomb Training video. Today's topic is how to choose a great name for your new business or product. And really, it's one of those topics that people seem to struggle with a bit, getting creative. And when you're starting a new business and everything else is going on, there's so much else that you've got to organise. It can be tricky to actually devote the time and sort out a great name that really describes what you do and people are likely to remember. But there is a bit of a science to it, so I'd like to just go through some of the stages and hopefully help you with the process. Initially, there's a big problem, obviously, for existing companies as well. Just to say that not always, the big companies don't always get it right. There's plenty of examples of brands that have gone awry, such as the Royal Mail tried to rebrand to Consignia a few years ago, spent millions on rebranding and then went back to Royal Mail, which obviously has got a huge pedigree, huge history and connotations with the brand. So it's tricky even for the larger companies to get right. But as a small business, you have to do what you can, and whilst you might not want to blow the budget and bring in brand consultants and all this kind of thing, just spend some time to think about it initially. Go through the following steps, the following stages, and hopefully you'll be able to refine something down and come out with a good example at the end of it. So what do you do first? The first thing is to actually focus a brainstorming session on it. Drag in friends or family or other people that are around the business that are going to be involved in the business with you, and just come up with a whole list of ideas. Don't exclude anything for the moment. Don't exclude things that are spelt wrong or that existing companies already have or anything. Just produce a big long list of potentials, names that you like the sound of, that might describe what you do or where you are or the kind of service that's involved. And the more the merrier. Get everyone to suggest a whole range of names that you'd be interested in. And that's really casting the net as wide as possible, just for the ideas initially. And from there, then obviously you've got to start the process of refining down and narrowing down the list of options. So the second stage is to actually check online. Really, there's no end of ways that you can actually check potential names for their use. But the first one is going to be a simple search. If you can use more than one search engine, don't just put it in Google, but just see what else comes up to try and work out whether the name is, make sure it's essentially available, and also whether you can imagine a website or a domain for your email with that name on it. So just do a few searches around the name that you're thinking of and have a look and see what else is on there. If it's going to be a limited company, then obviously there's issues with making sure that the name is particularly unique. But if not, if it's just going to be a trading as name, then you've probably got a bit more scope to be able to use a particular name, even if it's already in current use. The second part of checking online is to see how searchable it would be. So, for instance, if you're in a business which is essentially local, then if you're going to call it something like the bike shed, if it's a bike shop doing sales and repairs, then is the bike shed searchable, or does that throw up lots of other results all around the country? And if so, would it be better to actually call it, say, the bike shed Manchester, or the bike shed London, or wherever you're going to be located? Because by putting the location with it, that actually improves the searchability to bring your particular website and your name to the top of the list. So just think about whether not only what the competition is that's already listed online, but also whether it's going to be easily searchable when you're checking online and want to use a particular website. So yeah, searchability is going to be quite a criteria when you want to come up with a new name and a new business. The next stage, moving along, is to check the existing users. So as I mentioned, if you're going to make it a limited company name, then obviously check Companies House. You can see which other companies are current, but also it should tell you whether the name has been used previously for companies that have dissolved or been liquidated or whatever for previous businesses. So it can actually be useful, and then it might also give you an idea, just in case one of the previous businesses might have had a problem for some reason. So just have a look through Companies House and check the names. And again, it might also be that something like the Bike Shed, for instance, to carry the same example going, Bike Shed Limited may well be used, but the Bike Shed Manchester Limited may well be available. So again, it would be a good way of double checking if you go to Companies House, and that will give you a better idea as far as availability is concerned for particularly the limited company. And just a word about using similar names to existing businesses. I think if you're a small business, you can probably get away with it, but really you want to try and steer clear of, you don't want to antagonise any large businesses. So I think a while ago there was an example of someone, there was a corner shop, that had called himself Singbury's instead of Sainsbury's, and I think he might have got away with it, apart from the fact that he'd used the same colours and the same branding appearance, the same typeface as Sainsbury's the supermarket. So I think it's fine if you just want to make something look very similar, but you do have to be careful not to look like you're actually passing off as one of their stores. So yeah, look into the availability and look at the size of the competition that you're actually likely to be addressing. So the next point is make sure not to limit your future. So in describing the name, if you come up with something that's, for instance, only cakes or exclusively cakes, then it might be fine for where you're starting with the business. But think about where that might actually go in the future. If you're going to be a bakery, who knows, you could be selling loaves and rolls and everything else. There could be 1,000,001 other products that you actually want to sell. So if that were the case, then you might actually have to develop the name so that it's only bread and cakes or something similar to that. If you get the idea, then really you might need to think about that in advance. I know that Poundland have an issue with this at the moment. Poundland was great when everything was a pound, but now I think they're getting more of a problem because they obviously want to start to move up market and sell things that are not just at £1. And I think that's going to be difficult for them with the confinement or restrictions of the name that they've actually got. So I think just think about how it may potentially limit the future with the name that you come up with. Another point to consider is whether you should actually use your own name. I think there's pros and cons for this. It really depends on your own situation. I think there can be some very good points for using either one or even two names, you know, the partners' names effectively of a business. So something like, classic example, Marks and Spencer, two individual people that come together to form the company, and that becomes the business name. Rolls-Royce, another example, two individuals that come together and create the company name. But whether that is actually good for every situation, there's obviously a lot more cases where business partners might move on. Businesses may even be sold, and whether you actually still want somebody else trading under your business name into the future. I think there's pros and cons for both. One, I suppose, on the positive side is that if you're willing to put your own personal name to it, then people are perhaps reassured of a commitment to quality and a commitment to actually providing the service and so on. And I think all of that can be very positive. Yeah, you've just got to weigh up whether you want your business going into the future carrying your own name as well. So yeah, the jury's out as far as I'm concerned, but just weigh up the pros and cons before actually choosing an individual or even two individuals' name to create the business name. So once you've actually gone through those stages, the different steps, then I think the best thing to do is hopefully you'll have narrowed down the list and you should actually come up with a shortlist effectively, maybe 4 or 5 names that you quite like the sound of, that perhaps describe very well what you do. Have a look and see if there's a touch of humour or, as I say, a way of making them unique. I mentioned before the idea of misspelling. It can be very useful to create something that's going to be unique. Netflix is a good example. Craft with a K. There's no end of unique names that have come about and maybe particularly misspelt, but that does make them unique and obviously helps in things like the searchability, the fact that you're not going to get anyone else using exactly the same name. So yeah, weigh up the shortlist, see whether they're unique, see whether they're memorable. Does it add a bit of humour? Does that help to work around the type of business that you've got? And yeah, weigh up all of those things. And then before you decide, I'd suggest just taking a couple of days, sleep on it, and come back to make the final decision. Discuss it with as many people as you can at that stage and see what other ideas or angles different people have got. And all of that input is very useful. So that's how I would go about coming up with a new name for a business. Just remember though, it's not the only way of creating that business. It's not the most important thing. The most important thing is going to be what value you deliver to the customers, what service are you going to provide, and all of the planning and the strategy that would go in. You know, what technology have you got? All of those kind of things. It's all part of the mix. So the name can only be one part of that overall mix. It won't make or break the business. But yeah, it's certainly something that will help. So I wish you luck, and thank you very much for watching. Hope the video has been useful. And as ever, don't forget to subscribe, and see you next time. Thank you.